Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I know it's obviously been well over a year since my last upload, but I'm finally back with a PC build. However, this is not built on an extremely tight budget like the computers in the £30 PC series, which honestly seems like I filmed it yesterday. This build was for my friend who is switching over from console gaming and has his own YouTube channel, which you can check out here for some very impressive Fortnite playing, but he aims to play some more demanding and interesting games and this beast will tear through it like it's nothing. Especially because both monitors are only 1080p, so we'll have absolutely no problem with maximum settings. I'll start by going over the parts which my friend picked. The CPU is an AMD Ryzen 5 5600X, which is a very good value and is more than sufficiently powerful. This will be kept nice and cool by the MSI MAG CORE Liquid 240R 240mm liquid cooler, which is more than enough to cool it, possibly allowing for some overclocking. This is paired with 16GB of Kingston HyperX Fury DDR4 3200MHz RAM, which allows for better performance with Ryzen CPUs than lower speed RAM, and also 16GB is enough with any situation with gaming. The motherboard chosen is the MSI B550M PRO-VDH, which is a solid motherboard for a reasonable price, allowing for some overclocking as well as virtually every feature a PC builder could ask for, in the more compact format of my ATX. In terms of storage, he's using a 1TB Seagate Firecuda M.2 SSD, which will presumably be used to store games, more important programs in Windows 10, as well as a supplementary 1TB Seagate Barracuda hard drive, giving a comfortable 2TB of storage in total. As you may know, there is a massive shortage of GPUs right now, which has been going on since last year, making it impossible to get the powerful RTX 3070 that my friend initially wanted. However, the slightly more modest but still very nice Gigabyte GeForce RTX 2060 appeared for sale, so this was the most obvious option instead of waiting however long the shortage to improve. This was powered by the Corsair RM750 fully modular 750W power supply, so all of the unnecessary cables could just be discarded or hidden away, thanks to the flexible building capabilities of the Phanteks Eclipse P400A mid-tower ATX case, which looks beautiful and is very good in terms of build quality with its tempered glass and aluminium construction, and pre-installed RGB fans, in addition to 3 extra cooler Master RGB fans, and yet another 2 RGB fans that came with a liquid cooler, so we ended up with a lot of RGB fans. Now it's time to move on to the build process. The build itself was done over 2 days. On the first day, the CPU and RAM had already been installed in the motherboard, so I first removed the power supply to make sure that the appropriate cables were plugged in, that it was orientated the right way around, as the fan had previously been facing upwards so that hot air would have been blown into the case, and then I made the unusual decision to start by installing the hard drive into the case, as this was one of the easiest bits and I was in a bit of a hurry. Next, I unboxed the motherboard and removed the M.2 cover to peel off the thermal pad and install the SSD, which was another fairly easy process. I could then install the motherboard into the case without having to screw in all the standoffs. The GPU could then be installed by removing the PCIe covers and plugging it into the PCIe 16X slot. Next, I removed the front part of the case, which came off without a screwdriver, and removed the pre-installed fans that came with the case to make way for the Cooler Master fans. I wanted to have fans on both sides of the radiator due to being left with spares, however there was no way to do this, so I went with only the MSI fans that came with the cooler. I also wanted to install the radiator at the top of the case, but the fans would not clear the RAM, so the front it was. The most difficult part of the build was installing the CPU water block. The mounting system requires you to push very hard on each side of the mounting plate, and obviously it's hard to do this without worrying about breaking something in the process. However, we finally managed to get it on without breaking the motherboard or getting thermal paste to the motherboard, which is a relief. Next, we mounted the fans to the top of the case and installed the power supply the correct way around this time, before proceeding to plug in the key power connections, leaving some of the annoying front panel I/O until the end. I plugged in the SATA power and data cables as well as connecting some of the RGB fans together. When I returned the next day, I realised that the fan configuration that was being used would be a bit unbalanced, so I removed and reinstalled the radiator twice due to a cable getting stuck in the fan, stopping it from spinning the first time, and this also allowed me to have the fans visible from the front of the case as well as the bottom fan, which would not have been able to be installed otherwise. I also flipped the fans at the top and the back. However, if this configuration poses problems, then it can easily be changed. Then it was a matter of making sure that everything was plugged in. I tried to make sure that the RGB fans were chained together properly, and the front panel connectors were plugged in into the correct pins, which is one of the most annoying things about PC building in my opinion. I then shorted the 2 pins on the motherboard to test it, but when it booted up, the BIOS showed that the CPU was getting too hot. As a matter of fact, it was 101 degrees Celsius. This was because I had not plugged in the pump of the liquid cooler correctly, so I changed the way in which the fans and pump were plugged in, and it worked fine. There was always one fan, either not spinning or with no RGB. I eventually found out that there simply weren't enough fan headers on the motherboard to accommodate all this, so we decided to have the RGB on the rear fan not showing until a splitter cable could be sourced. We finally tucked the cables in to at least partially manage them, and swapped out the side panel screws from the power supply where I clumsily installed them to on the side panel where they should be. The last step in this build was doing the satisfying peeling of the film on the tempered glass side panel, and then the PC could finally be switched on. And by the way, I did figure out how to wire up the power button beforehand. The PC booted up perfectly with the CPU nice and cool at around 30 degrees. I'll now show you the PC in action. If you want to see how it games, then I'm sure my friend will upload some videos of gameplay on it to his channel. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video, but thankfully you won't have to wait over a year this time.